Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to do an overview of the LG G8X ThinQ. This phone actually got released late last year, and right now you can find it online for a substantial discount. I got mine for about $500 from eBay, and I think the reason is because the new V60 just came out, which pushed the prices of these down a lot, but I think that these are still really good phones, and they're still pretty unique. So these phones were released with flagship specs last year, and it's only like half a year later. So they're a pretty good deal, I think. It's also called the V50 in Korea, but it's called the G8X in other countries. Anyways, the unique thing, of course, is the dual screen. So this dual screen is a feature, I think that's also on the new V60 as well. But the V50, aka the G8X, still pretty good. And I was looking for a phone that can be a really good media player. So if you guys remember a long time ago, I'm talking about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a category of devices called the PMP, portable media players. And those devices were specifically used for playing music, movies, videos, looking at photos and stuff like that. So there was the Creative Zen, there was the iRiver, the Arcos, the iPod, of course. So a few well-known brands, the Kowan, right? A few well-known brands that made a lot of these PMPs. And since then, they've pretty much been superseded by smartphones, right? You can just pick up any smartphone and can do the same thing. But I was looking for a phone that can be really good at playing media. So most phones, I think I've complained about this a lot before, but most phones kind of, their audio quality is kind of like secondary, right? They don't really put a lot of emphasis on their audio quality. So I think a few companies out there that do pay attention to the audio quality on their smartphones are LG, HTC, and Sony, right? So HTC with their old phones, the HTC ones, they were probably one of the best smartphones for playing music out there. But now HTC has kind of faded. LG is still keeping up. This phone actually has a quad DAC inside of it, so it's really good for audiophiles, I think. And then the Sony Xperia, of course, still keeping it up with the new Sony Xperia 1 2 or Mark 2. Has a headphone jack as well with a really good DAC in it. So there's only a few manufacturers left. None of these makers are really that popular. I don't think I've reviewed that many LG devices, but obviously they're not as popular as they were before. The market is pretty much dominated by Apple, Samsung, and a bunch of Chinese phone makers now, which is unfortunate, right? And none of them really care much about sound quality, unfortunately. So I got the LG dual screen mostly because I want to have a dual screen device that's really good for multitasking and also for playing media, and I want to get a good audio smartphone as well. Alright, so I'm going to do a spec rundown for this phone. So, like I said, this phone came out with flagship specs at the time. Snapdragon 855, Adreno 640, right? Those are flagship specs last year. 6.4 inch, 2340 by 1080 OLED display. IP68 water dust resistant and military standard A10G compliant. And that means that this phone is actually pretty rugged, although I'm not sure if that actually applies to the secondary display here. But at least for the main phone, right, it seems to be pretty rugged and durable. So in that sense, it's already replaced my Galaxy S8 Active. So I don't need to worry about rough handling of this phone. So that's another good thing, is you can bring this to a pool somewhere, right? And you can just use it and don't have to worry about your phone getting damaged that much. So two features on this phone I think makes it really good for use as a media player. So one is that it has a micro SD card expansion slot, which also takes in UFS 2.1 as well. So you can put in some super high capacity micro SD cards in there. So there's actually a micro SD / SIM card tray on the top of the phone when you take it out, and you can put in your micro SD, which is a good feature because, you know, the iPhones, Google Pixels, they don't really have micro SD expansion. And it's just nice to have the ability to load up all your data and stuff and then just put it in, swap out your data even, right? So if you have a bunch of movies or music, you can easily swap it out. So that's the reason I like it. Plus, it comes with 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM, which means that this has a sizable amount of storage already. Now, the camera on this device, I'm not going to use this for the camera because I already have the iPhone 11 Pro, which has a better camera. But if you were to use this as your main phone, then the camera is totally doable, right? It's okay. It's not going to be as good as the Pixel 4 or the iPhone 11 Pro or Galaxy S20, but it's definitely still on the upper tier end, right? It's not like terrible or anything. So it's 12 megapixel f1.8 and has the normal wide angle camera, and then it has an ultra wide angle as well, a 13 megapixel f2.4. So you can see the dual lens right there. And the selfie camera is that right? A 32 megapixel f1.9. That's a lot of megapixels for a selfie camera. So if I'm reading that right, it has a 32 megapixel selfie camera. That's huge. That's more than the back. I wonder why they put so many there. But it's capable of HDR recording as well. So both cameras, even the selfie one, is capable of 4K recording. And the other reason why I like this device as an audio player in a media player is the sound. So it does come with stereo speakers. A lot of flagship phones, believe it or not, actually still come with mono speaker. So like the iPhone comes with the mono speakers, a lot of the Galaxy flagship devices come with mono speakers still, and this one comes with stereo speakers. So definitely a lot better. It's not front facing like the Sony Xperias are, but like the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, I think that's the name. It comes with front-facing stereo speakers, and those are probably better speakers. So I'm a little bit disappointed that LG didn't put in the front-facing speakers. It's still down-firing, as you can see. There's one right there, but I think there's actually one also facing towards you as the earpiece. So I guess you have one front-firing, one down-firing, so it's kind of like a weird compromise between the two. I'd rather just have two front-facing. Still better than having a mono speaker. And it has a headphone jack. Yes, you heard that right. This phone still comes with a headphone jack. So I like that LG is still keeping that. I think LG and Sony are pretty much the only smartphone makers that's still keeping in the 3.5 millimeter jack, which is, you know, I've talked about this all the time in my other videos. I really wish that manufacturers didn't remove it because it's an option, right? A lot of us who have wired headphones, like, at least we have the option to use this, right? And it's not like it's saving any space in the phone. That's just marketing BS. They just want to sell you more dongles. There's no reason to remove it really, other than for them to make money. There's no reason to the consumer, to remove it. But anyways, I'm glad that LG kept the headphone jack, and it's a 32-bit 192 kilohertz audio, so it has super high-res audio capabilities, a really good DAC inside of it. It's a quad DAC, I believe, and also tuned by Meridian Audio, which are a luxury British loudspeaker company. So they tune the audio and has a quad DAC inside of it. So that's another reason why I think this phone is a pretty good media player. I guess another phone that could be competitive with this one as a media player is the new Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, which has a better OLED display, I think. They also have the dual front-facing stereo speakers, so it's going to have better speakers. Also has a headphone jack. They brought back the headphone jack on the new Xperia, and also has a good quality DAC as well. But the thing about that phone is that it costs way more. It's like $1,200 right now, and you can get this phone for less than half the price, and it comes with another display. So I think this one is still a better deal. The display might not be as good, and the speakers might not be as good, but I think for media, I think this one is a better value. So dual screen phones. Okay, I'm going to talk about dual screen phones for a second. The first one that I know of that came on my radar is the ZTE Axon M. So that one came out all the way back in 2017, and I originally wanted to get it because it was really unique for the time, but then it kind of just faded into obscurity, and then people kind of forgot about that one. Yeah, I think this is actually the first phone in LG's line to use the dual display, because the V40 I think does not support the dual screen attachment. So yeah, then there's this one, the LG, and then of course there's the Samsung Galaxy Fold, which is technically a dual screen device, but it's not really, because it's also a one screen device, because you fold it and it becomes one screen. So, but that one's in a different category, right? That's a folding device. Then there's the Microsoft Surface Duo, which I think is coming out later this year, hopefully by the holidays, but I'm not sure when that's going to come out, and that's probably going to be really expensive when it comes out. So originally I was going to wait for the Microsoft Surface Duo, because that phone sounds really, really cool. And you know, Microsoft hasn't made a phone in a really long time, since they discontinued Windows Phone. So I was looking forward to that one, but I'm not sure when that's going to come out, and it might be really expensive when it does. So I just saw this one, $500 on eBay. I got a dual screen, has, you know, last year's flagship specs, really good for audio. So I just, you know, picked it up. So I forgot to mention that there is another device that has a dual screen attachment, and that's the Asus ROG Phone 1. I actually did a video on this device early last year, and it came with this accessory called the Twin View dock, which if you put the ROG phone inside of it, you get a dual display, just like with the LG. But that one was a lot bulkier. Like it was basically like a game controller, right? You have a game controller, kind of like a gaming pad, and then you have another display that attached to it, and you just put your phone in that dock, right? So it's like this, except it's a lot bulkier, and you have like kind of a gaming grips and stuff there. It's also a lot more expensive. Like if you want to get the ROG Phone 1, it's still expensive. It's like 500 bucks. If you want to get the twin view accessory dock, that's another 200 bucks. So $700, you can get this one. That's a lot sleeker, a lot slimmer. Like you can see this dual display attachment is pretty thin, right? Whereas the twin view dock was like massive, right? It was bulky. So that one's more expensive, and it was bulkier. So I don't think it's really a good comparison to this. And same thing with the ROG Phone 2. The twin view dock for the ROG Phone 2 is also pretty bulky and mostly for games. It comes with that gaming grip controller, so you can attach those other game pads to it and stuff. So it's a different market, right? And it's also way more expensive than this. So I think that this is probably the best deal for a dual screen device. Like you don't want to buy the ZT and Axon M because that's way outdated. And I think the Surface Duo is still up in the air. We don't know how expensive that's going to be, and it hasn't come out yet. And the Asus ROG Phone, like I said, way too expensive, and the Galaxy Fold's in a different category of its own. So I think if you want to have a dual screen device, the G8X ThinQ is probably the way to go right now. I know the V60 actually came out as well, and it can also support the dual screen attachment, but again, more expensive. I think you're paying at least $900 with that phone plus the dual screen. So this is still the best value for a dual screen phone. All right, so let's look at the benefits of a dual screen phone. And actually what's cool about this device is it has a in-screen fingerprint sensor. So there's no, you can see that there is no place where they put a hardware fingerprint sensor. It's actually in the screen. So I just have to put my finger here and it unlocks. So that works pretty well. This is actually the first time I've used an in-screen fingerprint sensor, and it seems to work well. And then you have the dual displays right here. So you might be asking, what's the point of having a dual display? Well, it's mostly for multitasking, but I think for most people is not terribly useful because, well, first of all, Android is in portrait mode, right? If you put it in landscape mode, it actually doesn't work. So it doesn't shift or rotate or anything because Android doesn't really support it. Like I said, I bought this phone mostly as a media player, but I think it's also good as just a general, I guess, mini laptop type of device. So if you want to, for example, watch YouTube and I want to surf the web at the same time, right? And I think one problem is it takes a while for the screens to orient. Come on now. There we go. All right. So yeah, for example, I want to read about some games. So I did this example with the Asus ROG Phone as well, but let's say I go to GameFAQs.com and I want to look up a walkthrough. So I go to GameFAQs, right? And say I want to look at Final Fantasy VII Remake. So actually what's cool about this dual screen here is that you can actually use the secondary screen as another keyboard. So here I can actually just tap here and I can say swap screens, show main on dual screen, show dual screen on main. There's a lot of options where you can use this secondary display or main display for something different. You can actually put the keyboard down here. So I can do that, right? And then the secondary screen or the primary display, whatever you want to call this other screen, it can be used as a keyboard. So now this kind of reminds me of that old Toshiba Libretto that I did a video of years and years ago, but it was like a laptop, and you have the keyboard at the second display. So I type in here. It definitely gives you a much wider keyboard, so it's much easier for you to type in entries, right? So I say, oh, Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? And that's where I want to find the FAQ. And okay, here we go, PlayStation 4. Yep, I'm going to look at a guide here and go through a walkthrough. Now this GameFAQs is probably like one of the oldest running sites because I remember looking at these facts for like back in like the early 2000s. I remember looking at these facts, so they've been around for a while. Alright, so now I have the text walkthrough. But what if I still get confused or I get stuck at some point even though I have the text walkthrough? I want to have a video walkthrough so I can have a visual guide, right, on what to do. So then I just use the secondary display here and I could do Final Fantasy VII Remake walkthrough here. There we go. And then I can also view the video version. And let's see here. Yeah, so you can see this one, part 1. You can see the sound is very loud on this device. Right, so you got volume controls, and you got the Google Assistant button right here. Okay, volume controls and Google Assistant. So those are the buttons.
Well, here we go. I wanted to make this intro.
So yeah, now I can have the text walkthrough and the video walkthrough going on at the same time, so I can follow along, right? So that could be one use of the dual displays. And yeah, so just to show you how loud this device can get, I can pump the volume up all the way to full.
The night she was born. So I don't know. This is kind of
So it gets pretty loud. So yeah, these speakers are definitely pretty good. I do think that they're better than your typical smartphone. So that's great, and that would be like one use case. And there's a few more use cases as well. I think LG also adds this game launcher thing. By the way, guys, if you want to add any apps to the secondary display, you just have to click this icon here and you have access to all your installed apps. And of course, your main display has access to all the apps that you downloaded as well. So yeah, I usually use this phone in the landscape mode, which is unfortunate for Android because it doesn't really like the landscape mode. So kind of had to operate things like this. But if I want to try out the game launcher, I go here and I believe, yeah, it will orient. Yeah. Sometimes it takes a while to detect it, a few seconds maybe. But I just installed Sonic CD. This is the game that I'm going to use for testing this game launcher here. And I had just to click this LG gamepad to launch the LG gamepad and test that out. Okay, so it looks like it doesn't, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I can't customize this gamepad to be on this display. I actually want it to be on this display, this screen, because this one's more heavy, right? Like it just makes more sense for the heavier one to be on the bottom. But anyways, it looks like it forces me to use the lighter display as the gamepad, and I have to hold it like this, which is a little bit awkward because now it's top heavy. Anyways, I can launch Sonic CD right now. Of course, the OLED display is pretty gorgeous, and see how this gamepad works. So, see the top heavy display. So on this LG gamepad here, I can actually customize this. This is for most games. I think most console games will probably use this layout, but there's also one for racing games, like Asphalt maybe. Then there's one for fighting games, so you want to play Street Fighter, you have that layout. And then you have one for kind of like a dual D-pad kind of layout right here, and the customized one. So I'm just going to use the usual one here. And yeah, so usually when you play games on your Android device or a smartphone, you usually have to like touch the screen, right? So obviously this isn't as good as a physical controller, it's not a substitute, but I do think at least it's better than putting your fingers all over the display, right? So whenever you play a smartphone game, usually they have the on-screen controls and you gotta like, you know, touch the main display and it blocks your screen, and it's not really optimal, right? Here at least you have more space for your fingers to move, right? So at least I think it does that well, and it works the same way as a physical controller might when you press the buttons. So yeah, we can go here. I wish I can just switch the screens because I actually want this to be on the heavier display. Anyways, maybe there's some way I can adjust that later. But yeah, it seems to work pretty well. Again, not a substitute for a physical controller, but it's still better than using it's better than touching this display, right? Which is how most, if you didn't have any controllers, that's what you would do on a regular smartphone. And then start. Oh no, select. Oh, I guess it's B. Yeah. Okay. I guess it would depend on the game. Ideally, I never have to touch this display. I can just touch this one and use the controls. And I can use the analog controls, or quote unquote analog controls. It's not really analog, but anyway, simulated analog controls. I can use that. Whoops. Yep. And I assume if you put an emulator on this that you can map these controls as well. So if you guys are interested, try it out with an emulator. I think it should work. Now, my main emulation device is the Razer Phone 2, so I'm not going to put any emulators on this one. This is mostly going to be for my music and movies. That's what this device is for. Yeah. Anyways, it's playable. It's not, like I said, not a substitute for a physical controller, but if you don't have a physical controller, this is probably the next best thing, right? And it's the D-pad, right? D-pad works. The analog controls work. Or the simulated analog controls, right? Alright. Alright, and then close the gamepad anytime. And then there we go. So yeah, that works more or less as you would expect. It's not a replacement for an actual like joystick or D-pad or anything like that, but it's definitely still better than touching the main display with your fingers, right? And gives your fingers more space and more room to move. So yeah, there's some use cases for the secondary display. Another use case I can see is if I watch like a movie or something like that. So say I watch Parasite, okay, and okay, I have Parasite playing, which is a great movie. Then I'm gonna add Wikipedia here, and I want to find out who this actress's name is, and I don't want to pause the movie or anything like that. So this is another use case for the secondary display, right? So yeah, watching Parasite, I don't want to stop the movie, and I want to learn about some more about these actors, right? Or I want to learn more about the movie. Maybe that's a good one. So, oh, this will come back up. Actually, I don't want this to block my screen, so I'm actually going to put this back up. Yeah, let's put it back up. Okay, so that way it's not blocking the movie. All right, so now I want to put Parasite here. Okay, there we go. And there you go. Now I can read about the history or maybe the development or the actors and actresses in this film. At the same time, I don't have to pause or stop my movie. I can continue enjoying my movie. At the same time, I can learn more about the development or the plot, or yeah, I can learn about the actresses, the cast, right? Here we go, like reception. Okay, that's cool. Accolades, right? Legacy. Okay, spin-off television series. I didn't know that was happening. And at the same time, I don't have to pause or stop the movie at all. I can continue watching it at the same time. So this could be another use case, right? Just watching some video, and you can pull out something else, or you can have a chat messenger, right? So say I want to chat with my friends when I'm watching this movie, right? I can do that as well. I can pull up Facebook Messenger or Google Hangouts. There you go. I can do social media, or I can check my email, and I don't have to stop the movie, right? I can also pay attention to the movie at the same time. So it's similar to how we would watch a movie on a TV, and then we can multitask while that movie is being played on the TV. This is basically in phone form. You can watch the movie and then do something else. It's multitasking, right? So that's a use case for that secondary display that I might use sometimes, right? Another thing I can see using this dual display setup for is, say I'm checking my investments, right? So let's do landscape, right? So say I check my cryptocurrency, right? And oh, okay, I see that Bitcoin right now is at 99.30. Okay, well, and let's say I invested some in Bitcoin. I want to figure out how much profit I'm making right now. I can go to the calculator app right here, and I don't have to get away from this chart, right? I can just go to this chart and see, okay, this is the price it's at right now, and say I have 0.5 Bitcoin or 0.54 Bitcoin, and I can just calculate it from here without leaving this screen, right? And this is something you can do on a computer very easily, obviously, because computers can multitask very well. But on a phone, usually it's not really easy to do something like this, right? Where you want to have one window open and then you want to do something else related to that window. So, okay, I see the price right now, 99.29, and oh, 53.61. Okay, wow, that's how much it's worth, or something like that. So this could be another use case, right? I'm just thinking of things I would do on this dual display. So like I said, I use I'm going to use this phone mostly for the media capabilities, but there are a lot of possibilities you can do using the dual display form factor, right? So if we go to here, like I said, I don't like the LG interface, right? I don't like the Samsung interface. I don't like the LG interface. Anyways, I have to work with what I have here. So let's say I want to check the display, change some settings. We can change the dual screen display. So cover display, I set it to 10-second timeout, but the cover display is basically this once you close the phone. And this is really like almost like a mirror. So you don't really need to have a pocket mirror if you carry this phone around. It is like a mirror on the front side, but also displays your time, the day, and the date, and how much battery life you have, and some notifications as well. It's basically like that small display on a smartwatch, right? You have some basic notifications there that you can check. So that's there, and you can always keep it on if you want to. I'm just gonna save battery by not doing that. And then you can adjust some more settings on the dual screen. Change the wallpaper. Let's see. Home screen. Yeah, so these are all the usual settings that you would get on any LG device, right? You can change the theme, right? So right now, let's see, what if I change to this theme? Apply. Actually takes a while to apply. I like Sony Xperia's themes a lot, and I really wish that other manufacturers would have something similar. Okay, this is a pretty light theme, I would say. Interesting. So, okay, I just changed my theme, and that kind of changes the look of all my icons and everything as well. Change the font even. So that's some level of customization that you don't usually get. New second screen. You can choose how the corners look. So I chose this, but if you just want to have the notch, then you can choose the notch as well. But I choose to have like a bezel instead. And you can choose what's behind it. And keep it like that. You can even choose the corners. So I have the rounded corners or the square corners. And keep it rounded for now. Night mode. Let's use night mode. Yes. This is really helpful for OLED displays, because they don't really have to turn on for blacks. Then I put on video enhancement, screen colors. There is a lot of extra settings in here. So even though I don't like LG's extra UI, I do have to admit that they gives you a few extra options that you don't get in regular Android. Screensaver, you can have access to a screensaver here. Yeah, let's turn that on. Then for sound, what you can do here is you can turn on the hi-fi quad DAC if you have a pair of earphones or headphones connected. And you can turn on DTS-X 3D surround. You can change the equalizer settings. So there are a few other options that you can do with the audio here that you can't do with other devices, which I think is cool. So that's why I think this device is one of the better devices that you can get on the market right now for playing media, because you have all these extra settings for audio, right? You have a hi-fi quad DAC, you have the audio tuned by Meridian. You can choose, you can change your equalizer, you can change all your presets, you can change the balance of left and right. And quad DAC means it's pretty powerful, and it can drive a lot of high impedance headphones. So you have like a pair of audiophile headphones with like 600 ohms or something like that. You can drive it with this phone. And of course you have the dual OLED displays, really good for playing media, right? Watching videos and stuff on. That's really good. Of course you have the speakers are not front facing, which is a shame. I really think that they should have followed Sony's lead and made it front facing, but still better than most speakers out there, right? On most smartphones. And yeah, that's why I like this phone for playing media. I think it's really good for playing music and video, especially like if you have wired headphones, it's really good for that. Has a quad DAC for that. It's one of the better devices that you can get to drive your headphones with. It's not going to be like a DAP or anything like that, and it's not like my $1,000 Aston and Kearns. Like, don't expect that. But as far as smartphones go, right, I think this is one of the best. The Sony Xperia might be the other device that you might consider, but that one's also way more expensive. Yep, and that's pretty much it. The other thing is when you're in this case here, you have this magnetic charging connector here. It's kind of similar to MagSafe on a MacBook, So you have to connect it with a proprietary kind of connector, which I don't like. I think LG did this to make some money, to sell you some dongles or something like that, because it's extremely easy to lose that. And like, why have that, right? You can just open up the case here and just plug in your USB-C cable. I don't see what's wrong with this. Why do you have to add this proprietary MagSafe connector to sell us some proprietary dongle, right? That's really it's really inconvenient. So yeah, that's the one thing I don't like. I don't like that they added this magnetic charger in this case here. So now I'm pretty much going to have my phone in my case most of the time, although you do have the option to take it out. So that's the other thing, right? You don't have to have this phone in this case. You can optionally take it out. That's a option you don't get with the Z8X on M or with some of the other dual screen devices. You do have the option. I don't think with the Microsoft Duo you have that option either. But that's another great thing about the LG G8X is that you have the option to just use this as a normal phone, right? Because I know this might be bulky, right? It's going to add some heft to your device. So if you just want to use this as a regular phone, well, you can. And if you want to have the option of the dual display, then just plug it back in. But now you have to use this magnetic connector. You don't have the option of using USB-C anymore. So that's the one thing I think is kind of annoying, but overall, I don't really have any gripes with this device. I think it's a really good deal. Yeah, and I think people who buy LG devices know that the camera isn't going to be as good as the flagship cameras, right? It's not going to be good as like Apple or Google or Samsung. LG has never really had the best cameras on a device, but they're still top tier, right? They're not like terrible or anything like that. They're still better than most of the smartphones out there. So yeah, I think the LG G8X is a good pickup right now. Especially, they're discounted because the V60 came out a few months ago, and I think the V50 or the G8X is still a really good pickup. So for $500, you're getting a phone with two displays, not just one, but two. They are both top-notch OLED displays because we all know LG makes good OLED displays, right? I mean, their OLED TVs are pretty much the best-selling OLED TVs on the market. And you're getting a really good device for playing audio. You have a headphone jack, you have stereo speakers, you have a micro SD card slot for expansion, IP68 military stand 10G, so it's rugged. Yeah, I think it's just overall just a quality device that you can use. Is very versatile, and you can choose to use the secondary display or not, and it's very flexible that way, and has flagship specs. So what else can you really ask for in a $500 device right now? And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Please leave me any comments below. Would you guys buy the LG G8X right now, or would you wait for the Microsoft Surface Duo, or would you buy the successor, the LG V60? Let me know comments and feedback in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching. Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm going to show you guys a few things I wanted to try with my LG G8X smartphone. So first of all, the LG G8X is a phone that's a dual screen smartphone. I've already done a video on it. The main reason why I got it is because I think it's really good for obviously multitasking because it has the dual displays, but also for watching movies, listening to music, things like that, because of the great OLED display, actually dual OLED displays, and the fact that it has a quad DAC, headphone jack, and stereo speakers, which I think makes it really good for consuming media and watching multimedia content and stuff like that. So another thing I thought about doing with this phone as well is also playing games. So some of you may know that on a previous video I already showcased the Razer Phone 2. So this is my Razer Phone 2 and the Razer Jungle Cat controllers. This phone is a phone I mostly use for gaming, mostly for emulators, right? I mean, I play mobile phone games as well, but I mostly use it for playing emulators like PlayStation, N64, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance, things like that. And these controllers are really nice. I like the way that they feel. It's really clicky. So I'm pretty satisfied with this phone and this setup. But I also wanted to see if I can make this work with my LG as well, because my LG is a dual screen setup, right? So this should be more versatile for gaming as well, because this one is like a Nintendo Switch style gaming handheld, right? Whereas this style is almost like a Nintendo DS, right? With the dual screen. So I thought it might be cool to try putting a gaming controller on the LG G8X. And some of you may actually know that there is already a phone that does this kind of a gaming phone that already has this kind of setup already, and that's the Asus ROG Phone 2, right? The Asus ROG Phone 2 has a twin view dock, which is basically what's adding a second display, much like the LG G8X, and it also adds their own gaming controllers, which are the Kunai gamepad. The problem is the Asus ROG Phone 2 is really expensive, right? And it doesn't have a micro SD card slot. This phone has a micro SD card slot, and you don't need to pay as much money because it's not that expensive, right? This is only 500 bucks. That's how much I got this phone for. The Asus ROG Phone 2, you would need to get at least the 512 gigabyte version since it doesn't have a micro SD, which brings the price up to $900 for the phone itself. Then if you want to add the twin view dock, which I'm talking $500, this phone includes the dual screen accessory. For the Asus ROG Phone 2, you also got to add the twin view dock, which is like another $200 on top of that. Then you got to add the Kunai gamepad, which is another $150 or something. So you're talking about the Asus ROG Phone 2 setup, which is, that's a native setup that Asus made to have basically this layout, right? The gaming controllers with the dual screen, but it's going to cost you like $1,200, $1,300, which for me, is a little bit rich. So I wanted to approximate that setup with something much cheaper. So obviously got this phone for 500 bucks, including the dual screen accessory. And then I actually really wanted to use the Razer Kishis, which got released after this. So these are the Jungle Cat controllers, which I really like, but the problem is they won't work on most phones because it has to go inside this case. This is a custom case that's designed for the Jungle Cat. And Razer only released a few of these, right? They released it for the Razer Phone 2, which I'm using now, and then I think the Huawei or the Samsung, was it S9 or something like that, or S10? They released a phone case just for a few different phone models, so it's not going to work with the LG. So that's why I didn't use the Jungle Cat controllers with the LG. Otherwise, I would have used these. But I want to use the Razer Kishi as well, which came out after this. But the problem is the Kishi takes in a USB-C input. And the problem with the LG G8X is that when you're putting it into this dual screen phone case, you actually don't have access to the USB-C connector. It's using some kind of proprietary magnetic charger. So you have to use an extra dongle. I don't know why LG did, I know why LG did this. It's to sell more dongles. But it's just really, in my opinion, this is one of the worst things about this phone. I really do like this phone, the LG G8X. I just don't like the fact that when you put it in the case, the dual screen case, you don't have access to the USB-C connector anymore. They cover it with this magnetic charging accessory, so you got to use a dongle to charge it. So then it doesn't work with the Razer Kishi because that requires a direct USB-C input, right? So I have to go with a Bluetooth controller. So I was looking for a Bluetooth controller online, found this company called IPEGA. Is that what it's called? IPEGA, some Hong Kong company. This is pretty cheap. It's about 30 bucks US, 40 bucks Canadian dollars. Obviously, this is not a Razer, so I'm not expecting it to be as good quality as the Razer, but it's also much cheaper than the Razer because people, we all know that Razer kind of upcharges for their accessories, but at least the Razer controls are pretty good, right? They're very nice feeling, very clicky. I do like them. So this is going to be a step down in quality. It's not going to be as good as the Razer controllers, but what can I do, right? I can't use the Razer Jungle Cat or the Razer Kishi or the Raiju, right? They actually have a few different controllers. The Raiju is not going to work because it's a dual screen accessory. So none of the Razer mobile controllers is going to work, so I have to go with a Chinese company instead, which there are many, but I'm not sure which one's good and which one's not. So I just tried out this one, this IPEGA. Looks like a pretty standard setup here, right? You got your X, Y, A, B face buttons right here, home button, then you got your right analog stick, which is clickable, which is an L3, right? Select and start here, and then on the left side, you have a left analog stick, which is also clickable, the D-pad, which I don't really like this D-pad, actually, it's kind of mushy, and a turbo button right here. And this is the on button right here. And then this charges with micro USB. Yes, not USB-C, but micro USB, which is kind of a disappointment, but there it is. And then a lanyard right here. And then the back of the device, you can see that this gaming controller is meant to be expandable, as in it will expand out to fit your phone, the size of your phone. So I think it can fit up to 6.3 inch phone or maybe even 6.4 inch phone. But as you can see, my LG G8X is really stretching this controller to its limits. It really cannot stretch more than this because it's not really meant to hold a dual screen device. So my LG is a 6.4-inch device, and plus it's on this dual screen accessory case, right? So it's going to add some width. So you can see it's barely fitting into this controller accessory here, right? It's barely fitting. I had to really push it in here, and the top doesn't really close that well. So it's slightly bigger than what the controller chassis will support. So it can't really fully close. So again, I'm not sure how well this controller dock will work with my phone, but I'm testing it out here. It barely fits in, right? It's a little bit too big, but seems to be at least pretty stable, right? I just can't really close it fully. Anyways, let's see how well this controller dock does with the LG G8X dual screen. Alright, so let's try a Game Boy Advance game here. I'm going to try Super Mario Advance 4, which is Super Mario Bros. 3. Now for all these emulators, I've already configured them. I've already removed the virtual controls if there are any. I've mapped all the buttons, adjusted the screen orientation, aspect ratio, and everything. So it should be good to go. And actually with this phone, another thing I want to note is that the sound is actually quite good. So the stereo speakers are quite good on the G8X. I also like the stereo speakers on the Razer Phone 2 as well. But yeah, I think the G8X's speakers is just as good as the Razer Phone 2. So no disappointments there. It's a pretty good phone for gaming actually. Okay. I can use the analog controls as well as the D-pad. Yeah, so again, this sounds pretty good. I can turn it up to full, and you can see it gets pretty loud actually. So I would say the speakers are probably on par with the Razer Phone 2, which is pretty impressive considering that the Razer Phone 2 was meant to be a gaming phone, whereas the LG G8X wasn't specifically meant to be a gaming phone, but it's also pretty good for gaming as well. And there's no headphone jack on here. There is a headphone jack on here, but it's kind of a moot point when you're gaming anyways. You don't really have access to it. So I guess if you wanted to use headphones, you'd have to use Bluetooth headphones. But that's the case with pretty much any phone with gaming controllers, right? Because it obscures the headphone jack. Oh. Alright, so Game Boy Advance, which is basically it's basically Super Nintendo portable. Actually, I can try Super Nintendo because this is probably my favorite game console ever. So what you're going to do on this bottom screen here, that's something that's up to you. I mean, you can check your email, you can be on YouTube, you can be on Messenger, Facebook, Hangouts, Instagram. Well, actually, Instagram won't even support landscape. Maybe TikTok, I don't know. But you can do anything on this bottom screen while you're playing this game, right? You can, so let's say I want to have Messenger open. Okay, so let's say, there we go. So I can talk to my friend on Messenger while I'm playing, you know, a game up here. So, see, Omega Man X is a classic. You can play that one. Right. There we go. Alright. So one thing is, when you're on the screen right here, you can't use the gamepad actually immediately. You gotta click back in the screen here, and then you can use the gamepad. Because I guess it doesn't detect the primary screen properly otherwise. So if I do this, I can't do anything. Yeah, until I click back here. So it's not exactly like full-on multitasking. You still gotta click the proper screen, but you know, at least you can have both windows open, right? Alright, anyways, yeah, Super Nintendo is right here. Obviously, if it can run Game Boy Advance, it can run Super Nintendo, and pretty much all phones these days can run Super Nintendo. We can try a more powerful game. So yeah, actually one of the things I wanted to try with the dual screen smartphone is a DS emulator, right? Because wouldn't it be cool to have, you know, a DS actually acting as a DS and having like one screen on the top and one screen on the bottom, right? On an emulator, I mean. So that would be cool, right? But I don't think it works. I've been trying to get it working, but okay, Sonic Colors, right? Try Sonic Colors. Okay, so normally on a DS emulator, Drastic is what most people use, I guess. You have the dual screens right here, right? Now, since I have a dual screen smartphone, wouldn't it be nice to have one screen down here, one screen up here, right? And the way you would do that is by mirroring the display, right? But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the G8X has that option. So it doesn't seem like it has an option to mirror the displays. So that's really unfortunate, right? Because if I can mirror the displays, then I can just have one screen on here, which you can do, you know, using the Drastic options. You can have one screen on here, or the bottom screen, or both. You know, you can configure it in the app right here. But if you have it mirrored, right? If you have this screen mirrored down here, you can just, you know, choose whatever screen you want to display down here and choose whatever screen you want to display up here. That would be really nice, but yeah, I don't see any mirroring options here. You can swap the screen, you can show the dual screen on the main screen, which is right here, or, you know, just keep it like that, or put it to sleep. If you want to save battery life, if you don't want to use this display, then you can put it to sleep, or you can turn off this screen. So there's no option. There's no option to mirror this display with this display, which is really unfortunate because I really kind of wanted to play a DS game this way, right? The way it's meant to be played instead of in this format. But I don't know. I don't know any phone right now that supports screen mirroring. So that's kind of a bummer, you know. Like the Asus ROG Phone 2 with the twin view dock, the ZTX on M. Those are the only other phones I know of that have a dual screen capability, but none of them support screen mirroring, which is really a shame because I really want to be able to you know, play DS games as an actual DS, right? So it would be really nice. Yeah, so basically I can only play the DS the way that everyone else plays the DS emulator, right? Which is really unfortunate. I mean, it works, right? The DS is basically like a mini Nintendo 64 handheld, I guess. If you think of a GBA like as a portable SNES, so Game Boy is like a portable Nintendo, Game Boy Advance is like a portable SNES, and DS is like a portable Nintendo 64, right? So basically this is like N64 type graphics on a very small display. Anyways, yeah, that's Sonic. Yeah, so it's really unfortunate that I can't mirror the displays, otherwise I would be able to play the Nintendo DS emulator the way a DS is actually played. Very unfortunate. Alright, so I have Dolphin emulator running. This is usually the most powerful emulator I run on my smartphones. There's a few games you can play here. Let's try Mario Kart Double Dash. There it is. Do 100cc. Why Luigi, of course. So yeah, this is a Dolphin emulator running on the G8X, which I think it's running just as well as on the Razer Phone 2. I mean, the LG G8X is a pretty recent device, so I guess I'm not surprised that games like this. Anyways, that's Mario Kart Double Dash running on here. Alright. Guess we can try, of course, Soul Calibur 2. It's one of my favorite fighting games ever, my childhood.
Soul Calibur 2.
Nice. I tried to create a Flash game based on this game when I was young because I loved it so much. It's my favorite character back then. Talon. These controls are not bad. Like I said, they're not as good as the Razer Jungle Cats. But they're okay, they're serviceable. I'm not going to say they're anything great, but I mean for the price that I got them for, like 30 bucks, you get what you pay for, right? I mean for 30 bucks it's fine. I'm not going to say that it's a rip-off or anything at that point. It's worth 30 bucks. That's what I'm going to say. It's worth its price point. Yep, so it's Soul Calibur 2 running on here on the upper screen. You can also make it run on the bottom screen if you want, of course. It's depending on what you want the display to do. But yeah, this is using the G8X with a few emulators. And just to show you guys how it runs. And this controller, the IPEGA controller, is okay for the price. Again, nothing special. It is not like it's not like the Razer controller. It's not clicky. Like the Razer controller, I like it because it's so clicky and tactile. It just feels a bit better built. The IPEGA is a little bit smushy, but I'm not gonna say that it's a rip-off or anything. It's definitely cheaper, right? These definitely don't have the same feel like the Razers do. For 30 bucks, I mean the Jungle Cats were like, what, 80 bucks or something? For 30 bucks, that is what you get, and I guess that is expected at that price range. So anyways guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to show off my LG G8X, this dual screen smartphone with a gaming controller attached, because I wanted to see if I can do something similar to what the Asus ROG Phone 2 did, but you know, without having to pay for that. This is a reasonable approximation, I suppose. Yeah, another thing that might put you off from getting this set up compared to the ROG Phone 2 is the fact that this display kind of gets caught on the edges here, so you can't really close it fully. I mean, it'll still put your phone to sleep and everything, so you don't have to worry about your phone actually being on. But yeah, it's just a little bit unsightly, that's it. I mean, it works for me, might not work for some of you. So that's another thing I just want to bring up is, yeah, for this particular controller anyways, there might be other controllers on the market that might actually fit this device. I haven't tried them, but at least for this one, the IPEGA, it seems like this phone is a little bit too big. I mean, it fits, but you know, you can't really close it properly. So yeah, as you can see, there's some trade-offs here. Yeah, so for 530 bucks, right? 500 bucks for the phone plus 30 bucks for this controller. I pay what, like 40% the price of the Asus ROG Phone 2 plus the TwinView dock plus the controller. I mean, obviously not going to be as good quality, but I get a reasonable approximation for much less, right? So I guess if you guys want to have a dual screen gaming setup, this is probably the way to go. Just yeah, it's unfortunate that a lot of the better controllers just won't work with this. The ones like the Game Vice or the Razer Kishi or Razer Raiju, right? They won't work with this particular phone because of the way that LG kind of obscures their USB-C port when it's in this case. So that's really unfortunate. But you can definitely pick up some Bluetooth controllers like I did here, and it works. So yeah, I'm thinking about, can this phone actually replace my Razer Phone 2 as well? Because then I can use this phone for both media consumption, watching movies, listening to music, and playing games. So it's basically almost like a do-everything phone at that point. And I think it's pretty good. I mean, the speakers are really good for playing games, I feel, as well as anything else. Just the speakers on this phone are generally pretty good, just as good as the Razer Phone 2s, I think. And the camera is not so great, but you know, I didn't buy this phone to take pictures. I use this phone mainly to use as a multimedia device, and it's really been fulfilling that for me so far. The only thing is the dual screen, I feel like could be utilized better. I really wish that LG gave me a way to mirror the display or extend the display from one screen to the other. That would be really helpful, especially when, you know, using the DS emulator and things like that. So I really hope that, you know, in the future, maybe the Microsoft Duo, I don't know, if one of the dual screen phones in the future, maybe they can utilize that. Or the Galaxy Fold is another thing, right? I think the Galaxy Fold definitely has that feature, right? Because I think that, well, that's a different device and it's a lot more expensive. But that's another device I might actually try out with something like this, right? Because imagine putting like a folding phone here, and then, you know, if you want to have a DS emulator, you just fold it out, and then you start playing DS games on, like, you mirror the displays and stuff. That's also pretty cool. So I don't know. I guess I'll have to see what in the future what dual screen phones come out. But for now, the G8X is a pretty good option. So that's it, guys. Thanks for watching.